Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm back here with another My Team Career Mode Season 3 video, and it is of course the Hungarian GP weekend. But before we get into that, as always, if you guys haven't watched the last video, then click off the video now, because we are going to head to a little review of what happened last time out at our home Grand Prix. And we did make it 3 consecutive wins, and our first win at our home Grand Prix, extending our points tally to 114. We had slightly better race pace than my teammate Charles Leclerc, who suffered from a poor start after dropping behind Valtteri Bottas and Max Verstappen. He recovered to P2 with the fastest lap and has 125 points. He finished ahead of Max Verstappen with a strong P3, once again on the podium. That is for the 4th time this season. He had better pace than the chasing pack, which this time was led by Valtteri Bottas, who finished P4. He's 40 points behind Verstappen in the standings. Then, behind Bottas was his teammate Lewis Hamilton. He finished P5, didn't quite have the pace of his teammate, and was under pressure from a strong and pacey McLaren in the hands of Lando Norris towards the end of the Grand Prix. He finished P6. P7 was George Russell, a solid result, but a little bit disappointing after a fantastic qualifying in Q3. He finished in front of Daniel Ricciardo, who was P8 last time out, didn't quite have the pace of his teammate, while Carlos Sainz recovered to P9 after a shock Q2 exit, and then a poor tyre strategy at Ferrari, opting for the hards for his second stint in the race, hampered his progress. While Pierre Gasly was P10, he capitalised on a mechanical failure for Fernando Alonso, while Sergio Perez failed to finish after a mechanical issue earlier in the Grand Prix. And now, having a look at the constructors' standings, we further increased our lead over Red Bull in the battle for P1, while Mercedes have 82 points, 20 in front of McLaren, who are P4. Ferrari are then 4 points behind McLaren on 58, while AlphaTauri have 31, Alpine have 6, and Aston Martin have just 1 point. And now, straight into some decisions, we have got to either choose to either take some acclaim for just 50k or decline it, and we're certainly going to accept that. We want to get close to that 4th sponsor. I do believe it will be. I'm just going to check our sponsor that needs renewing. Pacifico, yeah, we can certainly achieve and hold for first position for 4 laps in the Grand Prix. So we'll continue on with them, and a really nice logo. I do like a nice logo on the car. We are going to take our second MGUH of the season. We've got plenty left, 4 in total for this season after we stack grid penalties at the Spanish Grand Prix, so we're fine to take another one there. And we are going to take our 3rd turbocharger of the season before, of course, the Hungarian Grand Prix. In terms of upgrades, we have got our redesigned diffuser layout coming soon, and we are going to try and complete the aero department before the Hungarian Grand Prix with a minor upgrade there, and then we're going to focus on trying to get that fuel injection system, fuel efficiency upgrade in pretty soon. That, of course, will max out the powertrain department. We've got some more events completed, and I'm going to have a little look at our departments and some upgrades. And I'm interested in the durability department here. Once we've maxed out the aero and the powertrain, we've just got durability to go for. So we're going to invest in a fabrication upgrade, only 4 mil, I think it was, and a build time upgrade, which was 3.5 million. Of course, we're in that situation where we want to upgrade in the durability department because we're going to be piling in the upgrades towards the end of the season, and our minor upgrade in the aero department has come in, and we can now opt for a large or small investment. We're certainly going to want to go for that large investment for 750 R&D points. They're not too worried about the cash at the moment. We've got plenty in the bank. And we can now have a look. In 2 days' time, we should have a maxed out aero department, and we can go for the fuel injection system before the Belgian Grand Prix. So we should have a maxed out powertrain department before then. And oh, the frustrations. Our aero upgrade has failed the redesigned diffuser layout, and that's going to cost us 1,004 to sort out, and hopefully we'll get enough R&D points to get it in before the Belgian Grand Prix, but that will be not maxed out just yet. And we've got one more upgrade on the powertrain, plenty on the durability, but the chassis department is maxed out. And now we can start to head into the Hungarian GP GP weekend, and what an interesting one this should be. But before we get into it, I am also taking a grid penalty for the CE today. 5-place grid penalty, and then we are going to revert back to the 22% wear one we've been using for the last Grand Prix. The reason why we're doing that is just because I don't want to be taking grid penalties at Mexico or at Jeddah. I didn't actually do that much free practice compared to normal. We really struggled with the car and finding some pace. We didn't do that much free practice, not that many R&D points. In terms of the weather, though, it will be a wet intermediate condition qualifying, that's quite likely, and a barren dry race. Two opposites there. Percentages for qualifying, 70% chance of rain in the race, below 3 at points. In terms of rivalries, we have a new rivalry. That's against Sergio Perez. That was after we beat his teammate Max Verstappen in our last rivalry. That ended at the last race at the British Grand Prix. Of course, Perez we had a rivalry with last season. We are going to get the rear downforce upgrade resecured, but that will be after the Spa Grand Prix. A real shame there. In terms of the R&D graph, though, we maintain our comfortable lead over the chasing pack, while Ferrari have some upgrades for this weekend. They move a little bit ahead of Red Bull, Mercedes and McLaren, who are constantly catching up there. The gap to the midfield decreases. Alpine with plenty of upgrades. Similarly for Aston Martin, while AlphaTauri, Williams, Alfa Romeo and Haas all aren't bringing any upgrades this weekend, and they're dropping further away from Aston Martin and Alpine, who are trying to catch up to the likes of Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes and McLaren. But of course now it's time to get into what will be a wet and hopefully interesting qualifying here in Hungary. Welcome to Q1, and it certainly is quite a wet one here out on track. As you can see, the surface is quite damp already, quite slippery, and heading into turn 1, we're way too late on the brakes. Thankfully, it is runoff, not grass on the exit, and we are going to continue along. So very treacherous conditions out on track, and we're going very wide once again. I'm generally just trying to find where we can push it. It's always a find a lap in the first lap of a session when it is wet. You can see what the conditions are like, where you need to adjust your braking points, where you can carry more speed, and of course, just generally adjusting your driving style. Unlike your opponents, which are always extremely quick to be able to go out there and put a lap in, that's pretty decent to say the least. Coming towards the end of the lap here, it has just been a find a lap, very, very slow. We have, however, managed to catch up to Giovinazzi, which I'm rather surprised about. I thought we'd be dropping further away, but then again, he is in quite a slow Williams. And into the final corner, a little bit too wide there, but to be honest, I felt a bit more confident towards the end of the lap and starting just to try and find a bit of pace. P3, as expected, a pretty poor lap, but actually not that bad. I expected to be last out of everyone with a lap like that, but into turn 1, a bit of a lock-up, but we keep it nice and tight to the curb, and we were going to get a good exit, but a little bit of oversteer, and of course ourselves going over that curb did cost us a bit of time. Hugging it tight though to the inside line there, that's pivotal. Just managing to get past the Haas, which is pretty important. We didn't want to get stuck behind that car. Very slow car, to say the least. And as you can see, heading towards the end of the lap, at the end of the middle sector, we've gained an awful lot of time. And that's generally because we lost the time on the last lap in the middle sector at the chicane, through the lovely winding SS section. And now towards the end of the lap, final couple of corners way too deep there for ourselves. Thankfully, we managed to keep it on the road. That's cost us a 10th. We need to keep it nice and clean through the final corner. It's actually pretty smooth, and our exit is nice and clean. This is going to be a very respectable lap. I'm really happy with that. And only 1.3 seconds off my teammate. We are going to try again, because I don't want to have to go out again in this session. It makes more sense just to go again. Maybe even make our lap better, secure it more, and then be able to sit back, relax, and be calm about it towards the end of the frantic Q1 session. And as you can see now, I'm going pretty decently on this lap, pretty close to our best lap before, and we spun on the curb, we're round, managed to get it slowed down enough so we only break our front wing. We are going to return to the pits. I think our lap's still good enough anyway, so we're not going to go out again. But thankfully, our car is still somewhat intact. That front wing can, of course, be replaced before the next qualifying session. As you can see, we are comfortably through Q1 there, looking at the results. A 1 minute 26.320 our representative lap time. Carlos Sainz and George Russell are P1 and P2. The Ferrari, of course, looking really pacey this season. Today, and of course this season, Carlos Sainz slightly quicker than his teammate George Russell there. P3 is Lewis Hamilton in his Mercedes in front of Max Verstappen in P4. The Red Bull's not looking quite as strong as the Mercs so far. Valtteri Bottas is P5, bit disappointing to be a couple of tenths behind his teammate, nearly 3 in fact there. Bit of work for him to do heading into Q2 and Q3. While my teammate Charles Leclerc is 6th. He'll be a bit disappointed with that, but of course didn't need to go out again. Sergio Perez is 7th here in Q1, a little bit behind his teammates, some work for him to do. And then it's the two Alpines of Alonso and Ocon. Fantastic work to be P8 and P9, proving that Alpine to be a very, very solid midfield car. Alonso, as usual, in front of his teammate Esteban Ocon. Then in P10 is Daniel Ricciardo. The McLaren's not looking that strong. 1,000th behind Esteban Ocon there. And plenty of work for the Honey Badger heading into Q2, because that McLaren is probably going to struggle to make it through. Then Pierre Gasly is P11, a fantastic effort in that very poor looking Alpine this weekend. AlphaTauri this weekend for him, though still P11, fantastic result in front of Lando Norris, who's really struggling in his McLaren. He needs to find some pace, and we are P13 in front of Nobuharu Matsushita, who once again makes it through to Q2. A fantastic rookie season from him, and he continues to impress in qualifying sessions. Hopefully, he'll get some points towards the end of this season. Lance Stroll is P15 in his AlphaTauri. Good performance there from him, considering how poor that car is. A little bit off his teammate, but still great to see him through to Q2. In front of Robert Schwartzman. Great effort there to make it through. Not quite finding the pace of his teammate, though, but still a solid result from him. Then, knocked out in Q1 is Guan Yu Zhou in P17, but still an absolutely fantastic drive from the Chinese driver there to be P17. We know he hasn't had the pace this season, and 2 P17 results in qualifying in a row. Fantastic work from him. He's in front of the Williams of Latifi and Giovinazzi. Really great work from Latifi to be P18 in his Williams, finding a bit more pace than his teammate Giovinazzi. Bit of a swap there. Giovinazzi may be lacking confidence in the slippery conditions, and he's losing out a bit to his Canadian teammate. Then in front of the Italian in his Williams, we've got Yuki Tsunoda P20, and a very disappointing quality result for him. Behind both Williams, really struggling to find pace in his Alfa Romeo, and quite a bit off the pace of his teammate Guan Yu Zhou, who's a rookie this season. Then he's followed by the two Haas's of Schumacher and Mazepin. Those two only separated by 2 to 3 tenths, so fantastic work there from Nikita to be not too far adrift. Now then, into Q2 we go. Our target is probably to make it through to Q3 and be about top 8, I would say, because I'm really, really struggling in these conditions. Very difficult conditions. And we haven't really had too many wet qualifyings or races so far this season. And the car's so much more developed, you've got to relearn how to drive in wet conditions. Of course, is a difficult track to drive anyway, never mind the treacherous, buttery, slippery track. It's like driving a bathtub on soapy water. That's really weird. Either way, a solid start to this lap here, but we're certainly going to need to go quite a bit quicker, I would probably say, if we're wanting to make it through to Q3. We're probably going to have to go out again towards the end of the session, but keeping it really nice and tight there at the penultimate corner, that's going to really help us. Now into the final corner, a really weird one to get right, maybe a little bit too close to the inside curbing there, but over the line we go, and I knew that was actually a pretty good final sector, to say the least. Only a couple of tenths behind Max Verstappen. I'm really happy with that lap. Didn't feel overly quick until the final sector, but it really, really was, and now we are going to go again to try and improve. But that is a very good lap, and I'd be very happy if we could keep that P3 and comfortably make it through to the final part of qualifying. Now heading through that flat in the dry right-hander, not so much really in wet condition. Then this blind left-hander, very difficult. You can see we're going quite wide on the exit there. This right-hander, when we keep it pretty too tight there. I'm often drifting out wide in these conditions. We've gone way too tight over the curb, and that's this lap pretty much gone, although a very clean chicane section, and that sort of brought us back into contention. But then a couple of messy corners has taken us to a pretty poor lap time, and we're not going to be able to improve this time around, and we are currently P5 in the order, so there is still some work to do for ourselves to make it through, and we are going to be out again. And now you can see towards the end of the session we are out once again, as always, out for our lap before a lot of the AI are even finishing their out lap. We like to get out early, have a couple of attempts, just that if you make a mistake on one lap, it's fine, we can then go again. That's what I prefer to do usually in quali. You'll probably know the trend by now, but a very nice and tight line through that left-hander, swooping out on the exit, pretty clean there, not spinning, of course, we don't want to be doing that, and it's a very clean start to Sector 1, which I'm happy about. If we can just keep going and carrying the pace through. Now, towards the end of the lap, we've had a much cleaner Sector 2, and we just need to hook up Sector 3. The only issue there is that Sector 3 is where we pretty much perfected it, and a bit of a lock-up, I would say, not too much. That has cost us, though, about a couple of tenths. Keep it tight on the left-hander, we don't. Another little lock-up on entry. That costs another tenth, and it's all dripping away. And our chances of Q3 could potentially be dwindling here if we can't get a decent exit. The exit isn't that great. We lose further time, and it's only couple of tenths quicker, and that's only enough for P7. We are going to go again because I don't know if that's going to be enough. Of course, the conditions are always changing, so opponents can go an awful lot quicker than they went before, or an awful lot slower in these conditions. You don't know. You've got to be on your toes, so we certainly need to put in a better lap time, and struggling through the first couple of corners, losing a couple of tenths, but a decent exit off turn 3, down turn 4, and we're continuing along. The final sector was where we lost the time last lap, so we could actually go quicker here potentially. And as you can see, gaining a bit of time from where we made mistakes, keeping it nice and tight on the inside line, and that's how much time you earn by not drifting out wide and locking up. But a very messy final corner. A good exit though. We're going to go slightly quicker. Norris is P8. He could potentially be out in quali, but we are P6 and comfortably through to Q3 there. Meanwhile, my teammate Charles Leclerc, as usual, is back at P1. 1 minute 24.790, his best lap in these conditions, in front of Sergio Perez. A fantastic lap in that Red Bull there, quicker than his teammate, and finding some great pace in front of Lewis Hamilton, who's consistently been at the top so far in today's sessions. He'll be looking to continue that trend into Q3 and the race. Carlos Sainz is P4, the Ferrari not looking as strong in Q2 despite its pacey looking in Q1, and of course on the R&D chart. He is in front though of Esteban Ocon. What a performance from the Frenchman in that Alpine. He's through to Q2, and not only through to Q2 in P5. Fantastic work from him, and really developing in that Alpine and starting to find some incredible pace. Great to see there. Absolutely fantastic. Meanwhile, we are P6 and through to the final parts of qualifying to decide the order of the top 10, while Valtteri Bottas is behind us in P7, quite a way off his teammate. A bit disappointing there for him, similarly so for the man who's behind him in P8 in the Red Bull. Of course, rival cars next to each other here. Max Verstappen with plenty of work to do into Q3 to catch up to his teammate, although I don't know if he didn't go out again, which would potentially explain why he's further down the order, but I'm sure he'll be up there for contention in Q3. Meanwhile, George Russell is P9, a bit disappointing considering the Ferrari's pace this weekend. Couldn't really extract that in the middle qualifying session, but Q3 still to come. And then Daniel Ricciardo is through in P10, finding more pace than his teammate. The McLaren, though, looking in trouble to say the least this weekend. He's in front of Lando Norris, who is knocked out in Q2. Another big Q2 shock here. We had one at Britain, and there is one here. Lando Norris is out, couldn't find the pace in his McLaren. The McLaren's not looking great this weekend, and 5 thousandths off his teammate, and he's knocked out in Q2. And a real shock to see Ricciardo in front of Lando. P12 is an Alonso, a good result in his Alpine, though couldn't really find the pace of his teammate Esteban Ocon, who was absolutely flying around the Hungaroring here today. And then, of course, you got the two Aston Martins, P13 and P14. A great work from Matsushita to be P13 and his teammate Robert Schwartzman, P14. Those two with some great pace this weekend. And then the two AlphaTauris are behind, as expected. Gasly in front of Stroll. That's the common trend we see. But not much they can really do in such an uncompetitive car. Once they get through to Q2, all the cars are so much quicker They're just pretty much in no man's land at the back, but a great effort from the duo of Gasly and Stroll. Now then, into Q3, big boy time, and we can start to lay down the best laps of the session. And for ourselves, unlike normal, it won't be trying to take P2 or maybe even pole. I'll be pretty happy if we can manage to get a top 5. That would be really great, and a huge slide on the exit. Thankfully, we do manage to control it and continue along, keeping it nice and tight, though, to the inside line there. Bit slow on the exit, couldn't get on the throttle quick enough, although you don't want to be too aggressive on the throttle in these conditions, as you're going to find yourself spinning round. And now, coming towards the end of the lap, it's been an okay lap, I suppose. Really hard to judge in these conditions what's a good lap or not, but as you can see, not as tight to the inside line as we want to be. My teammate Charles Leclerc, as expected though, going on to pole position. As usual, he'll be looking to take yet another pole this season. Only track I think he hasn't taken pole at was the last Grand Prix. When we took pole, we certainly won't be doing that today, and that was definitely a poor lap, what I suspected. Only P6 and a lot of work to do, so we are of course going again into turn 1, carrying a very decent amount of speed and not going too wide on the exit. We hug the inside of the curb at the corner, and as you can see, as we now head down the hill, already 2.5 tenths up on our previous lap time, trying to hug the inside line and get a decent exit too, really helping us here, and we could be about to lay down a decent lap in Q3. Now, heading up the hill, taking it on the left-hander, struggling to get the car round without spinning it. Bit frustrating there for us, but a very decent start to this lap. Of course, we will be going out again later in this session, as we always do in Q3. Through the chicane we go, carrying very decent speed. That's where we lost a lot of the time last lap. And as you can see, though, towards the end of the lap, we've made some big mistakes. It's proved very costly, and we're going very wide once again at the penultimate corner. Suddenly don't want to do that there. A lock-up on entry really hampering us. And now we're going to come round the final corner to cross the line. And that's actually P3. That really shows how close the field is. And we are straight out once again. But I cannot believe that. We are going for another lap. We need to manage to improve. And into turn 1 we go. Keep it nice and tight to the inside line. Don't use too much of the curb on the exit. Although we do go off the track. A big snap of oversteer as I'm taking you through the lap here. That's not really helping us. We didn't lose too much time. Reasonably close to the inside there. Not allowing us to be as aggressive on the exit, but still, we are quicker than our previous lap. And of course, now heading up the hill, this really difficult blind left-hander. Difficult in the dry, really difficult in the in the wet as we go way wide there. Thankfully, though, we don't lose too much time, and we aren't really gaining time by doing so. It's very treacherous, though, in these conditions, and through the chicane we head. Really nice and clean there. Fantastic exit. And now into the S's section. Got to judge it all perfectly. A lot of curb on the inside there. You don't want to drift wide there, though, with the bumps. That doesn't do your floor any good. And this lovely right-hander. Quite difficult to judge in the wet when you can start to be aggressive. And a fantastic middle sector. That gives us a purple sector too, but a big lock up there. That sent us wide. And we've just lost about 4 tenths of what we had before. And we're not keeping it tight once again. Drifting out wide. And we're losing more and more time. And what could have been something to potentially put us guaranteed in the top 3 is only going to leave us a couple of tenths, not even a tenth quicker. And that is not going to be enough. We are going to go again. Have a final attempt here in quali to try and secure that top 3. That's where we need to be for the race, of course, with the 5-place grid penalty. We'll be starting further down the field. Absolute frustration here. Big mistakes and a really, really difficult qualifying session. It's just not falling for us this weekend, unlike it did last weekend. But now as we continue along in this lap, we haven't been that clean. We've got to get it nice and clean through his left-hander and going way too slowly through there. And we're going to have to abandon the lap. And I have abandoned the lap coming towards the end of it. And we are going to be a disappointing P7 at the end of qualifying. 4 laps in Q3. But it only amounts to 7th, our best lap, 1 minute 25.906. And with the grid penalties, we'll have a lot of work to do in the race. But as usual, my teammate is on pole. A fantastic lap, a 1 minute 24.709 to put him in P1. In our team's car. Fantastic work from him. Interesting though to see whether he will take a grid penalty or not this season and have to work his way up the order. In P2 is Carlos Sainz. Fantastic pace in that Ferrari. I knew it was pacey coming into this weekend from the R&D chart, and he's really showing that in Q3. It'll be interesting to see what he can do in the race with Max Verstappen behind him in P3. The Red Bull not quite as quick as the Ferrari, but still a great performance from the Dutchman. He's then followed by George Russell in P4 in his Ferrari, not quite finding the pace of his teammate. Still a very strong qualifying result, of course, in front of the other Red Bull in the hands of the Mexican Sergio Perez, who's in P5. Once again, they're not quite finding the pace of his teammate, Max Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton is P6 and his Mercedes, the better of the two Mercedes drivers. But of course, that Mercs do not really have the pace this weekend that the Ferraris and the Red Bulls do. Meanwhile, we are a bit of a disappointing P7 in Q3. We'll have to work from potentially even further back with that 5-place grid penalty in the race. Then, behind ourselves, of course, we are in a Mercedes sandwich because it's Valtteri Bottas in P8, really struggling to find the pace of his teammate, whole 3/10 behind. That Mercedes not looking that great. Neither is another Mercedes-powered car, the McLaren in P9. Daniel Ricciardo, the only McLaren through in Q3, and only manages to be second to last. With last place, of course, being Esteban Ocon. Great to see him in Q3, but now it is time to move on to the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Welcome to Budapest once again for another round of the Formula One World Championship. Historically, a good race for first victories with Button, Hill, Alonso and Heikki Kovalainen all reaching the top step of the podium for the first time here. 14 corners then for our drivers to navigate at the 2.7-mile Hungaroring today. It's 6 lefts and 8 rights around a lap here, with average speeds in the region of 120 miles per hour. With me today, of course, is Anthony Davidson. Now, can I get your take on Max Verstappen? That was a great podium in the last race, so can they keep that momentum going this weekend?
There are never any guarantees in this business, but certainly the performance last time out would have boosted their confidence coming into this one.
Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. An immense lap from Carlos Sainz yesterday puts him in pole position, edging out Max Verstappen, who'll start from P2. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Russell, Perez, Lewis Hamilton and Leclerc. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Bottas, Ricciardo, Norris and Fernando Alonso. The owner driver, Matsushita, Robert Schwartzman and Gasly, Stroll, Joe, Nicholas Latifi and Antonio Giovinazzi. Tsunoda, Ocon, they've taken a grid penalty. Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today?
Heading into this one then, we are going to have a quick rundown of the grid before we begin, because grid penalties have certainly shook it around a little bit, and it is Carlos Sainz who inherits pole in his pacey Ferrari. What can he do from P1 on the grid? He starts in front of Max Verstappen, who's been promoted to the front row. He's had plenty of podiums this season. Could he potentially take his first victory? He starts in front of George Russell in his Ferrari. Of course, that Ferrari looking quick. What can he do from the second row with Sergio Perez behind him in fourth? He's promoted up to there. And quick note, everyone is starting on the medium tyres for this Grand Prix. P5 is Lewis Hamilton in his Mercedes. The Mercedes hasn't quite got the pace this weekend, so him and Valtteri might struggle to make any progress forwards. And of course, Lewis will struggle to defend from my teammate Charles Leclerc, who starts P6 at the start of this Grand Prix. He's taken a 5-place grid penalty. Question is, can he make his way back up the order? Valtteri Bottas starts P7, a couple of places behind his teammate. He'll want to join forces with him and try and attack the Ferraris and the Red Bulls. And it's the two McLarens of Daniel Ricciardo who made it through to Q3, and Lando Norris, who didn't. Those two McLarens haven't had great pace this weekend, so I suspect they may potentially struggle a bit in the race. P10 is Fernando Alonso in his Alpine. He'll be looking to potentially get some points this weekend, while we start P11, just outside the points, with a good opportunity, though, to charge up the order to hopefully take something good in this Grand Prix and limit our losses to my teammate. Then it's the two Aston Martins of Matsushita and Stroll, P12 and P13, and you never know, they've got good pace. Could they potentially take points this weekend if disasters unfold in front? Then P14 and P15, we got the two AlphaTauris of Pierre Gasly and Lance Stroll. Haven't quite got the pace this weekend, but they might be fighting with the Aston Martins in the race. Guan Yu Zhou starts P16 in his Alfa Romeo, a good position to start. Can he try and stay there and potentially push forward? He'll start in front of the Williams of Nicholas Latifi and Antonio Giovinazzi. Great quality for Latifi. Giovinazzi will be looking to fight forward in the Grand Prix. That duo is in front of Yuki Tsunoda. He'll be disappointed with his quality result and be looking to work his way up the field towards his teammate Guan Yu Zhou, with Esteban Ocon behind him. What a shame for Esteban Ocon. A fantastic quali, but due to grid penalties, he's dropped down to P20, changing some engine components. He'll have to work from there and get overtaking the race, and it's two houses of Schumacher and Mazepin who round out the grid. In terms of strategy, though, we are starting on the medium tyres. We'll then go on to the hards, or if we are really doing well with tyre wear and it's not too bad, we may go on to the softs until the end of the Grand Prix. But now it is time for round number 7 in Season 3. 5 red lights. A long hold, they're out, and away we go for the Hungarian Grand Prix. A poor start for Ricciardo in front, a good one for Alonso, and a poor start for Matsushita, who is behind us. That allows us to sweep across to the right-hand side, down the inside line, a huge dive bomb, nice and clean, side by side with Bottas and Norris on the exit, but we are going to come through into P7. Well, my teammate Charles Leclerc has got past Lewis Hamilton. Further back, we've got Matsushita versus Lance Stroll side by side through that winding turn 3, and it is going to be Matsushita who slots in behind Lance Stroll. Valtteri Bottas is currently behind Lando Norris. Norris trying to go around the outside line of me there, but we hang him out to dry, and Valtteri Bottas comes through into P8. The Mercedes regaining that position that he lost off the start. In terms of the order there, Max Verstappen leads the Grand Prix from George Russell, and Carlos Sainz has dropped down to P3. He's ahead of Sergio Perez and my teammate Charles Leclerc. It's then the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton, followed by myself. Then we've got Valtteri Bottas and then the two McLarens of Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo, who rounds out the points. Fernando Alonso is currently just outside the points in P11, ahead of Robert Schwartzman and Lance Stroll. Matsushita is currently P14, with Pierre Gasly and his AlphaTauri down there in P15, ahead of Antonio Giovinazzi and Guan Yu Zhou. Latifi is P18, ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, while Esteban Ocon is P20, failing to make progress in this Grand Prix so far. And then behind him is the two Haas cars of Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin. And now on to lap number 2 with ourselves, and towards the end of it, in fact, Lewis Hamilton with a bit of a lock-up in front. We're trying to make him make a mistake, trying to force a mistake out of him to go for a move, because until we get DRS, we just simply can't get close enough to him to be able to overtake, and we don't want to drop too far away from my teammate, Charles Leclerc, who's currently in front in P5. But of course, a great start for Verstappen in this Grand Prix. He's up into P1, and DRS is enabled, but Hamilton is just hanging on to that second mark to Leclerc, so he will have DRS. So until he drops out of DRS, we're not really going to be able to effectively attack him down the main straight. And now, as we're heading towards the end of lap number 3 and then on to lap number 4, we do have DRS onto the back of Lewis Hamilton, but once again, he is still somehow within the DRS of Charles Leclerc. He's hanging on at the moment, and that's meaning we just can't seem to get past him. Although it isn't too bad for ourselves, because we aren't losing too much time to Charles in front, because Hamilton is managing to stay within that DRS. But we do want to clear him pretty soon. It is difficult to overtake round here, though, at Hungary, with, of course, a very short main straight and the other DRS zone being only really there if you need a bit of an extra boost after the main straight, if you got really close to the back of another car. We did manage a purple first sector on lap number 4, I do believe it is, but now end of lap number 5, on to lap number 6, and Lewis Hamilton may be out of DRS. We have DRS at the moment, and we are chasing and chasing and chasing. He's getting closer and closer. He doesn't have DRS. He's dropped out of DRS, so we've now got to get going. We've got to get past Hamilton on this next lap, on lap number 7 or 8. But Esteban Ocon currently in P20 as we're about to head on to lap number 8. Still yet to make any progress in this Grand Prix. It looks like he's going to start now, though, down the main straight. Yuki Tsunoda in front in the AlphaTauri. He's had a poor start to the Grand Prix. And Esteban Ocon's going to try around the outside line. Tsunoda's going to fight him, though, down the inside line. Great defending from the young Japanese driver, but Esteban Ocon's going to have more DRS, and he's going to go down the inside line of Yuki Tsunoda in that much quicker Alpine than the Alfa Romeo, and moved on for Esteban Ocon, and some fantastic side-by-side racing between the Alpine and the Alfa Romeo. And now towards the end of lap number 8, we didn't manage to go for an overtake, of course, on lap number 8, but hopefully on lap number 9 we'll be able to go for an overtake. The gap to Charles is really increasing at this stage. We need to get a bit of a move on here. Hamilton will not have DRS though. He's way out the DRS of my teammate, and now we've got DRS. We're using a good dosage of DRS down the main straight. We're going to try and go down the inside line. Hamilton tries to push us right to the inside line. A little bit of a lock-up, but we get the car slowed down on the curb, and the move's done, and the DRS on the exit ensures that we take P5. Meanwhile, Esteban Ocon's continuing his overtaking spree. He's going down the inside line of the Williams of Nicholas Latifi, and he pretty comfortably gets that move done there for P18 on lap number 9 of this Grand Prix. If we look further in front at the moment, Fernando Alonso is starting to drop away from the McLarens, but is comfortably in front of Schwartzman and ready to pounce on a disaster for cars in front. Going really slowly. It's going all over the curves. What's happened? It's a mechanical failure for Fernando Alonso. What a shame. He's running so well in this Grand Prix in that Alpine, and he is out of the Grand Prix. Schwartzman's going to come through into P11. Then it's going to be Lance Stroll, Nobuharu Matsushita, Pierre Gasly, Antonio Giovinazzi, and then Guan Yu Zhou. Esteban Ocon is going to go past his stricken teammate. Then it's Latifi, Tsunoda, Schumacher, and Mazepin. What a shame for Fernando Alonso. Meanwhile, Pierre Gasly is losing out to his teammate by being behind a slower Nobuharu Matsushita, but down the inside line now into the braking zone at turn 1. Matsushita's going to try and protest it, but it's all done by the time he reaches the exit. Fantastic work from Gasly, and now he can push back up to his teammate Lance Stroll, who's stuck behind the Aston Martin of Robert Schwartzman. Meanwhile, Esteban Ocon is now looking to get past the second of the two Alfa Romeos, and it's Guan Yu Zhou, who's currently in P16, but not for too much longer, because Ocon's going around the outside line. Zhou's going to fight this to the wire like his teammate did, and he's currently staying ahead, but with more DRS for Esteban Ocon and a quicker car, he's going to go down the inside line of Guan Yu Zhou. Fantastic battling there. Zhou with the inside line though, but Esteban Ocon carries the speed through and takes P16, and some beautiful battles at a track which is notoriously difficult to overtake. You absolutely love to see this. And on lap number 12 here at the moment, my teammate Charles Leclerc currently in front, then it's Sergio Perez in front of him. We are starting to slowly bridge the gap to them, while Hamilton is dropping further away. The McLaren's pretty much out of the mix at this stage. They just don't have the pace at the moment. We did manage a purple sector 3 there, really clean. We are trying to push onto the back of my teammate. We don't really have the pace in this Grand Prix. We've got slightly better pace, about a 10th quicker per lap compared to the Red Bulls and the Ferraris. The reason why my teammate is so close to me is because he simply can't get past Sergio Perez, because he's got DRS from the two Ferraris and Max Verstappen. Meanwhile, Pierre Gasly is currently P13 in this Grand Prix. Then it's Lance Stroll in front of him. Gasly's caught up to Stroll because Stroll simply cannot seem to get past Robert Schwartzman. He's doing a fantastic job of defending, but doesn't quite have the pace in this Grand Prix. And he's spun it! He's spun it at the start of the SS section. He's done, nearly causes a pile up. Look at this. Thankfully, no broken front wings. Ocon's stopped there. I think Giovinazzi's been caught up in it. Guan Yu Zhou's been slowed down by it. Esteban Ocon's really been hurt by that incident. He's dropped really quite far back, down to P19, and all that fantastic work from Ocon has been thrown in the bin by a huge mistake from Robert Schwartzman and his Aston Martin, and the safety car is out, which means then Latifi P16, Zhou, Gasly in front of him, Giovinazzi is currently P13, he's coming into the pits, Lance Stroll's into the pits, and Matsushita from all of that is up to P11. All these guys taking advantage, coming into the pits. We couldn't come into the pits because safety car was deployed after we've gone past the pit lane, but Matsushita is into the pit, and nicely out. Great pit stop there for him. Giovinazzi will be coming to the pits. A pit stop that's pretty strong, an AlphaTauri for Stroll, but he's forced away, I do believe, for an Alfa Romeo going into their pit stop. And Nicholas Latifi, a fresh set of hard tyres fitted for him. No one opting for an aggressive two-stop strategy, as you'd expect. So at the moment, Matsushita P11, then it's Lance Stroll, Giovinazzi, Guan Yu Zhou, Pierre Gasly, Latifi, Schumacher, Ocon, Schwartzman, and Yuki Tsunoda in P20, and we are into the pits. Unfortunately, though, Charles Leclerc is also into the pits, so it will be a double stack. Both Ferraris and both Red Bulls are in. But wait, the Mercedes are staying out. A huge tactical mistake. Pretty much a free pit stop, and same for the McLarens. A free pit stop in this Grand Prix for them, and they are not taking it. Absolute madness. We are going to lose out due to the double stack, and it is Verstappen and Russell who come through. My teammate moves up ahead of Perez and Sainz, and Perez manages to get in front of Carlos Sainz. So Carlos Sainz from pole position now down to P9. We are out behind these guys because the McLarens and the Mercedes didn't pit. We didn't lose any positions, but really frustrating for ourselves because my teammate is now up in front of Sainz and Perez, and that's pivotal for the championship here because we're going to be losing more points to him that we really cannot afford to be losing. But we're on to the hards until the end of the Grand Prix. I wanted to go mediums to soft. We can't do that. But now a refresh of the order. Hamilton still yet to pit. He currently leads the Grand Prix under the safety car. Then Bottas is currently P2. His teammate. Then we've got two McLarens of Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo. The top four, I say again, still yet to pit. Then it's Max Verstappen, George Russell, and Charles Leclerc, my teammate, who's jumped up to P7. Sergio Perez has managed to jump Carlos Sainz in the pits, but has lost out to my teammate. Sainz all the way down to P9 with ourselves in P10. Matsushita is in P11 in front of Lance Stroll and Antonio Giovinazzi, while Wang Yuzhou is currently in P14 ahead of Pierre Gasly, P15. Latifi is then in P16, while Schumacher's really gained from this, up in P17. Ocon's been quite a loser. He's down to P18 in front of Robert Schwartzman. And Yuki Tsunoda, a bit of a disastrous Grand Prix for him. He's down to the back, nearly in P20, but it is Nikita Mazepin who does round out the field. And now the safety car restart is about to commence. It will be Lewis Hamilton who will lead the field away, and we want a good start to be able to push onto the back of Carlos Sainz. A bit too wide though through the final corner and onto the curb. The car snapping out, and this is really worrying because Matsushita is trying to come back at us. Thankfully though, our engine power, Anthony RS is holding him off, and we are going to stay in front into turn one. Keep it nice and tight on the curb, but a huge slide on the exit, and now Matsushita is going to try and come through. I'm going to try and defend, but we're absolutely helpless, and that mistake is really, really costly. We don't usually make huge mistakes like that. We haven't done that much at all this season, but now we're going to drop behind Matsushita, and already we've lost a whole 2 seconds to Carlos Sainz, and that's only going to increase, and this is our Grand Prix in absolute turmoil. We are well and truly in the mud here on lap number 18. Meanwhile, Hamilton and Bottas, Norris and Ricciardo still yet to pit in this Grand Prix. Huge tactical mistakes from their strategists. Are they going to be into the pits this lap? Hamilton's into the pits, and Bottas? What are Mercedes doing? A double stack, and the same at McLaren. Not only did they not bring in their drivers under the safety car to take advantage of that, they are double stacking in this Grand Prix. Hamilton putting on the hards. Bottas is going to lose out. They might as well have just let Bottas and Ricciardo come in next lap. They should have pitted under the safety car. They didn't. They're paying the price now, and they're double stacking. So Hamilton and Norris are fine. They're pretty comfortable. But now a huge gap back to Valtteri Bottas and Daniel Ricciardo, who really lose out. So it's Hamilton P18, and it's Lando Norris behind him, his fellow countryman, the Brit, in P19. Then Bottas and Daniel Ricciardo are P20 and P21, and they are the real losers in this terrible strategy. Meanwhile, Esteban Ocon has jumped up to P14 after that. He's chasing down the back of Mick Schumacher. This could be entertaining as we traverse down into turn one. He's going to try and go round the outside line of the German. The Haas, of course, a much slower car, but he's really, really jockeying for position with Esteban Ocon trying to keep that position. Ocon, though, will have the inside line. Fantastic battling here, and Ocon is going to come through into P13. Great work as he continues to make his way up the field. And as you can see, we have lost an awfully large amount of time to Carlos Sainz, and the chance of us catching up to him in this Grand Prix is very small now, considering we're only about maybe a tenth a lap quicker, and there's only 15 more laps in this Grand Prix. But Matsushita is really, really slow. We just can't seem to get past him on the straights, but now we should be able to pretty much glide past him, only a tenth and a half behind. And as you can see, that DRS and ERS really helping us, and we have managed to get back onto the racing line before we even reach turn 1, and that's ourselves up into P6. Meanwhile, Antonio Giovinazzi and Pierre Gasly side by side. Giovinazzi is going round the outside line of Gasly, trying to defend, but Gasly comes through into P9, Giovinazzi P10. My teammate Charles Leclerc, though, is right onto the back of George Russell, and this is his opportunity now because Verstappen has moved a whole second away from Russell. Russell doesn't have DRS, he can't defend, he's helpless. And Charles Leclerc, my teammate, is up down the inside line into P2. The DRS train has broken, and now he can charge up Verstappen, and surely a win in this Grand Prix for him is inevitable. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton down the inside line of Nikita Mazepin. That's the first move for him on his recovery drive in this Grand Prix. Lando Norris will be thinking about a move on Nikita Mazepin pretty soon. He's going to get close, but not close enough this time round at turn 3. Now into turn 4 he goes. He's really close to the back of the Haas, and now on board with Lando Norris, surely not, up the hill into this left-hander. He braves it out around the outside line, and it's the move done from Lando Norris. An absolutely insane move. I can't believe that. Fantastic, absolutely beautiful. I really can't believe that. Meanwhile, Esteban Ocon is getting closer and closer to the points. Now, he's going to go down the inside line into turn 1 of Guan Yu Zhou. He overtook him earlier in the Grand Prix. Does it once again. That is for P11, while Valtteri Bottas has got past the slow Haas of Nikita Mazepin, already dropping backwards like a stone after the safety car restart. Daniel Ricciardo currently pressurising Nikita Mazepin, heading onto the back of him. His teammate pulled off an insane move earlier, and he's going to go for one now. It's Daniel Ricciardo at the chicane. Fantastic move on Nikita Mazepin. He's up into P20. Meanwhile, my teammate Charles Leclerc has made easy work of catching up to Max Verstappen, and now an inevitable overtake. Max Verstappen tries to defend, but my teammate Charles Leclerc in our much quicker car down the inside line. He's going to try and get the move done. Verstappen's going to protest it. He's coming back at him. A great exit from the Dutchman, but he just can't compete with our straight line speed, and Charles moves into P1. Meanwhile, Esteban Ocon is chasing down Giovinazzi. Both drivers have had a fantastic Grand Prix. Giovinazzi in his slow Williams, and an insane recovery for Esteban Ocon. He's going to go down the inside line into turn 1. And that is the move done, a meaningful move for him as he takes a point in this Grand Prix. Meanwhile, it's Lewis Hamilton versus Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda really defending well against Hamilton, but the pace of the Mercedes coming through out on top as we head now down the inside line for Lewis. And he's going to get the move done, leaving Yuki nearly hung out to dry for Lando Norris. He can't come through there. Looking further at the field, Lance Stroll currently still behind Nobuharu Matsushita. He's in front of his teammate Gasly, but he's spun over the curb. A huge spin. Somehow he doesn't collect his teammate. He's going to have to wait for everyone to come through. That won't have done his floor any good at all. Neither will it have helped his CE wear either, but Lance Stroll is down to P20. A huge spin, and that could have been points for him in this Grand Prix, but he's thrown it away. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton is continuing his recovery drive. Now, down the inside line of Robert Schwartzman. He gets the move done there. Meanwhile, his teammate, Valtteri Bottas, is also going down the inside line. For him, though, it's down the inside line of Yuki Tsunoda. Robert Schwartzman having to defend a little bit from Lando Norris as they head into turn 3. Now it's Daniel Ricciardo down the inside line of Yuki Tsunoda. What a move at the first corner in Sector 3. Absolutely fantastic from the McLaren. 2 incredible overtakes from Daniel and a fantastic one from his teammate. A bit of a risky dive bomb. Yes, Tsunoda had to avoid him, but very entertaining to watch. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton is now trying to get past the Haas of Mick Schumacher. Schumacher has drove fantastically in this Grand Prix, and he's continuing to do so, but does lose out to the much quicker Mercedes, who's on a bit of a rampage to recover after a terrible strategy decisions. Meanwhile, Daniel Ricciardo is pulling over. What a shame for him. P20. And Lance Stroll comes through into P19. Meanwhile, it's Lewis Hamilton versus Nicholas Latifi. This could be interesting down into turn 1. The Williams versus the Mercedes. Same power unit, but a much quicker Mercedes, and that DRS helping him to get comfortably through. Meanwhile, Hamilton on to the next lap here. Lap number 28 on to 29. And he's chasing down Guan Yu Zhou. This is now for P11. He's nearly at the point. Down the outside line it will be, into turn 1, gets it done before the braking zone. Meanwhile, Lando Norris is currently chasing on to Robert Schwartzman. He's going to try the exact same thing his teammate did, nearly on the grass as he was pushed by Robert Schwartzman down the inside line, though. He's going to get the move done on the exit. Another exquisite overtake from the McLarens. A real shame his teammates out the Grand Prix there, but I suppose with the strategy disaster, it's not the worst of Grand Prix to have a mechanical failure at. And now Valtteri Bottas is going to try and follow the McLaren through. It's not difficult to follow the McLaren through. It's that bright of an orange. But now as we head down into turn 1, it's going to be Bottas down the inside line of Robert Schwartzman, and you're going to hear that an awful lot today, and an awful lot more down the inside line at turn 1 and around the outside line. That is, of course, the overtaking hotspot, and Valtteri Bottas' teammate Lewis Hamilton is going to get a point in this Grand Prix. He moves up to P10 past Antonio Giovinazzi, who's had an incredible Grand Prix. Shame he won't be getting points. And now Lando Norris versus Mick Schumacher. Norris down the inside line of Mick Schumacher, P14 for him. Points, however, considering we're on lap number 32, potentially out of reach. And with ourselves, we have slowly caught up to Sainz, but not by enough. And we're not going to reach him by the end of the Grand Prix. So we are going to pit for the soft tyres. We've got a comfortable gap back to Matsushita. That's 25 seconds. We're going to pit for the soft tyres, and we're going to see if we can set the fastest lap, because that's one less point my teammate's getting, one more point we're getting. We've got to maximise the points we're going to get in this Grand Prix. If we stay out, we're 6th. If we pit, we're 6th with the fastest lap, providing we don't make a mistake and spin. Of course, in that situation, then we'll drop behind Matsushita and Gasly, but hopefully that doesn't happen. Anyway, we are into the pits for a fresh set of soft tyres. We're going to go for the fastest lap, have some fun at the end of quite a quiet Grand Prix. For myself, a clean stop from the team. 2.5, it's not incredible, but it certainly isn't disastrous, and we are going to be out comfortably in front of Nobuharu Matsushita in the Aston Martin. We don't want to get stuck behind him once again. Bad memories from last time that happened, but we are going to go for the fastest lap in this Grand Prix with 2 laps left. Lando Norris is going to go from move down the inside line. Nicholas Latifi. Both Williams have drove fantastically well today, and a great recovery drive from the McLaren there. And as you can see, penultimate lap in this Grand Prix. It's gone really quickly, and we are heading onto the final lap pretty soon. We've had a fantastic lap this time around. Purple Sector 1. Purple Sector 2, and it is going to be purple, not purple Sector 3, but a green Sector 3, and a purple lap time, 1 minute 15, 3.83, and that's that extra point for ourselves, and 1 less point for my teammate. He had that, and he would certainly have kept that on those hard tyres, because he is the quickest driver at the moment in the whole field. And on to the final lap we go. We're probably not going to go quicker this time round, since we made a bit of a mistake there, but what a Grand Prix it has been. P6 for ourselves is a bit disappointing. It's a bit of a what if Grand Prix. If we'd have not dropped behind Matsushita, could we have been P4 maybe? Could we even potentially have been P3? P2 even? We don't know. But it's still been an entertaining Grand Prix, a dramatic one, and sort of a damage limitation Grand Prix. My teammate Charles Leclerc does win once again. A fantastic drive from him, and really showing some great patience out there today to wait for the DRS train to break and then capitalise on that. And also a fantastic Grand Prix to watch in terms of disasters with strategies with the Mercedes and the McLarens. But we are going to come home for P6, our worst result of the season when we crossed the line. Of course, the worst before this being mechanical failure, but we are going to finish P6 at the Hungarian Grand Prix.
And with that, we wrap up yet another incredible Grand Prix weekend. Anthony Davidson, how do you think they were able to set themselves apart today?
It was a question of right place, right time today. We were looking at an entirely different race before the safety car came out, but they were able to take full advantage after the field had been bunched up.
Well, I'm thoroughly exhausted after the excitement of that race, but I'm sure it's nothing compared to our drivers here. They've worked hard to make it up there, and it's great to see them make their way out onto the podium.
This may be the race we look back on where we think this was where we lost the championship battle against my teammate. Hopefully it isn't, though. A decent recovery drive from ourselves from P11 on the grid to P6 at the flag. And the fastest lap, a really nice 1 minute 15, 3.83 on those soft tyres, opting to pit at the end of the Grand Prix, which means we take 9 points. this time out, but we do lose a lot of points to my teammate Charles Leclerc, who takes 25 with a fantastic win. He was patient, clever, but most of all, extremely quick. Once again today, executed that one-stop strategy perfectly and took advantage of the double stacking in the pit stops under the safety car. Max Verstappen finished P2 in his Red Bull. Another fantastic drive from him and 18 points in the end. That will further increase his lead on the chasing pack for P3 in the championship. And of course, he will close in on ourselves. George Russell finishes P3 in his Ferrari. A great podium from him in his debut season. Fantastic work to take 15 points today in front of Sergio Perez in the Red Bull. A solid drive for him. Of course, managed to get ahead of Carlos Sainz during the pit stops. And he didn't quite have the pace of his teammate, but still a good drive. Carlos Sainz, though, will be really frustrated with that one. A bit disappointing considering he started P1 and then dropped down to P5 by the flag. Some misfortunes and generally just some poor start, of course. Poor start there in the Grand Prix. And then misfortunes in the pit stops. He has 10 points today. It's a bit of a what could have been for him and what could have been for myself, of course, dropping behind Matsushita. And that never have happened. It could have been a lot more, but we finished P6 in the end in front of Matsushita. And what a drive. In his rookie season, he takes some points. And it's not just 1 point, 2 points, 4 points. It's 6 points with an incredible drive from the Japaneseman today. Absolutely fantastic. And a very well-deserved P7. He finishes in front of Pierre Gasly. A very strong drive to take 4 points in that uncompetitive Alpha Tauri. Great to see him really pulling that car up into a position where it really shouldn't be. And he finishes in front of a certainly driver of the day, Esteban Ocon, P9 from P20. Insane pace, an insane drive, an insane perseverance, and providing us with plenty of action to take 2 points. He finishes in front of Lewis Hamilton, who made a good recovery after, of course, the strategy shenanigans from Mercedes and McLaren. He takes 1 point, but still a disappointing result for him. Antonio Giovinazzi finishes a fantastic P11 from 18th on the grid. A disappointing quali, but he certainly makes up for that with a fantastic result in the race. Shame he couldn't get any points, but a really, really great performance. Lando Norris is P12 in the end. A solid recovery from him and some fantastic overtakes in the Grand Prix. Bit of a shame, though, that, of course, the strategy went wrong there at McLaren, as it could have been maybe a bit more. Valtteri Bottas also failed to score. P13 for him. The double stack proved very costly in the Grand Prix and only managed to recover to 13th. No points for him today, and that will hurt him in the championship. Guan Yu Zhou, though, P14 from P16 on the grid. Finally, a great quality result and a great race result from him. A very solid race weekend to finish 14th in front of Nicholas Latifi, who'll be really happy with that result in his Williams. He drove really well in the Grand Prix. The Canadian starting to find some pace in that car. Couldn't quite match his teammate out there. Nonetheless, great work from him. He's then in front of Mick Schumacher in that Haas. Another standout performance today. Great work from the German from 21st on the grid to 16th, and a really poor car. Yes, he managed to capitalise on the disasters with that spin in the safety car, but great work from him. He finishes in front of Robert Schwartzman. He was doing really well in the Grand Prix until that very costly spin, and he paid the price as a result and finished P17. In front of Yuki Tsunoda, he'll be disappointed with his result too. He simply did not have the pace at all. I don't know if there's an issue or something, but he's really, really struggled in the Grand Prix. Lance Stroll was P19, second to last of the finishers. That spin proved incredibly costly for him. It could have been points, but he absolutely binned it out the chicane. He, though, did finish in front, of course, of one driver, who was Nikita Mazepin. He finished a lap down, as usual. Did not have the pace. Ricciardo and Alonso failed to finish due to mechanical failures. In terms of the championship, then, we drift further away from my teammate, who has 150 points. We have 1, 2, 3, and are 27 points behind. That's going to be very difficult to claw back in 3 rounds. Max Verstappen sits in P3 in front of his teammate Sergio Perez. Of course, Max Verstappen extending his gap from the chasing pack, while his teammate Sergio Perez moves up to P4. He now has 58 points. George Russell moves up to P5 in his Ferrari. He's got 47 points with a great result today. Valtteri Bottas failed to score and is on the same amount of points as Russell. Lando Norris moves down to P7 in his McLaren. He has 38 points, 2 more than Carlos Sainz, who has 36 in P8 for Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton fails to score today. He has 36 points, the same amount as Carlos Sainz, while Pierre Gasly in P10 has 27 points. He's 3 points ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, who drops down to P11 and outside the top 10 with just 24. Meanwhile, Lance Stroll is P12 in his AlphaTauri. He has 8. Nobuharu Matsushita has 6. Alonso has 6. Ocon has 2. And Robert Schwartzman has a solitary point. In terms of the constructors, we maintain our comfortable lead over Red Bull. That's 110 points, despite a poor performance from me today. The battle for P3, though, is looking very spicy. Ferrari shoot up there and are alongside Mercedes. Both have 83 points, while McLaren are in 5th with 62. AlphaTauri are in 6th with 35, while Alpine are in 7th with 8 points. Aston Martin close up. They're just 1 point behind with 7 points on the board and 3 rounds to go. That could really look spicy towards the end of the season, but a disappointing what-if Grand Prix for ourselves. Still, though, a good recovery from P11. If you guys have enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, but I'll catch you all sometime soon when we move on to the historic Belgian Grand Prix at Spa.